Hari Om. Let's start with the prayer. Om Samasta Jana Kalyani Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Sadgurum Brahma Vidvaram Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanura Mardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakhat Tvameva Tvameva Vidya Dravidam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Amadeva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Gurudeva Deva. Hari Om. We are doing the Panchadashi, and last class there was an interruption due to live stream stopped working, so we are doing the sloka 10. We'll just repeat the sloka 10 and then proceed to 11 and 12, so on. Ittam Satchit Parananda Ittam Satchit Parananda Atma Yutyat Tatha Vidham Atma Yuktya Tatha Vidham Param Brahma Tayors Chaikyam Param Brahma Tayos Chaikyam Shrutyante Upadishyate. So, Ittam Satchit Parananda. In this way, we have proved that Atma is of the supreme nature of happiness. So, it is not only Sat and not only Chit, and it is Anantam, infinite, and therefore it is Ananda Swarupam. Also, happiness comes from my own self, not from outside. Therefore, I am the source of happiness. And Atmanastha Kamaya Sarvam Priyam Bhavati. Because of my sake only, I need other things, and it's not for their sake I want it. So it is for my own sake. That means I am looking for happiness, and I get happiness from this, and happiness is not in any object, and happiness actually I am tapping from my own self. So I love myself, and that's what essentially implication is, because I love the source of happiness. So Atma Yuktya Tatha Vidham. In this way, logically I can establish that Atma is, the self is, that is the source of happiness, and it is of the nature of existence and consciousness. So it is Satchit Ananda. And Param Brahma Tayos Chaikyam Shrutyante Shopadishyate. So this Atma is nothing but Brahman. Brahman means infiniteness. So the Shruti declares that the self that you are is essentially infinite. So essentially, in the Krishna says in the Gita, say Yomam Pasyati Sarvatra Sarvam cha mai pasyati tasyaham na pranasyami tasame na pranasyati. Who sees me everywhere and everything in me, and he is always with me, because there is no difference between me and him in the sense, because sarva bhutastam atmanam sarva bhutani cha atmani. In the very next sloka, he says that the one who sees himself everywhere and everything in himself. So the self that I am has to be infinite. And this, how can I be infinite? So when you say how can I be infinite, the question implies I am identifying myself with the localized equipment, body, mind, intellect, and making a statement, how can I be infinite? So body, mind, intellect is localized, and it cannot be infinite by definition. So when we say what is that I is not body, mind, intellect. I am pure existence, pure consciousness, and also source of happiness. That I am. So I am the very subject pramata and not prameyam, the object of knowledge. So anything objectifiable entity is not me, because I am a subject, and subject cannot be objectified. Therefore I am, but I am cannot exist without identifying with the object, because that's the only way I can transact with. So to transactional purposes, I had to identify with the body, or with the mind, or with the intellect. Without the body, my intellect, I cannot really transact in the world. So as long as I am transacting in the world, I had to identify with the body, with the mind and intellect. But identification is only for transactional purposes, but in reality, I am that which enlivens the body, mind, intellect, make the matter into a dynamic conscious entity. That I had to understand by the Anvaya Vyatireka logic that was discussed in the previous slokas. And now say, I am Brahman also, I am infinite. On what basis? And Param Brahma, Supreme Brahman, that means I am pure, infinite Satchidananda. Tayoho cha aikyam, the identity of myself with the totality is Shrutyanteshu, this Vedanteshu, Upadishyate, is being expounded by the Vedanta. Vedas, this is what is called Mahavakyas, and I had to do Mahavakya Vichara. These are the declarative statements and identity of statements of Jiva, Atma with the Brahman. The self that I am is the self everywhere, and that statement comes only from the scriptures. So we need a scriptural pramana in order to know that I am Brahman. Without the scriptures, I can arrive at this yuktya. So by logically I can arrive at who am I, but that's only the tvam padartham. But I need to know that I can arrive at who am I by rejecting what I am not. I am not this, I am not this, like a neti statement, not this because this is an object and I am a subject. So I cannot be an object. So therefore, by rejecting the whole world, I am becoming a smaller and smaller entity. I reject the whole world outside because I am not that. I reject the body also because this is body. Idam, Sariram, Kaunteya. This is the idam. Anything idam is this. And I am not this. I am a subject, knower of this. Knower is different from a known. And therefore, I can reject anything that can be objectifiable, including the body, including the mind, and including the intellect. But we mentioned yesterday that who is rejecting? To rejection also I need the intellect. Buddhi is required even to reject that I am not the Buddhi. So one has to be careful. It's not go beyond the Buddhi. I have to use the Buddhi to recognize that I am not the Buddhi, but I am that which enlivens the Buddhi. Just as a moon has to recognize that I am using the moon, the moon has to recognize the consciousness or the luminosity of exhibited by the moon is not due to the moon itself, but due to the sunlight. That has to be understood. So this complete analysis required, therefore, not only a who am I inquiry, that is tvam padartham, I had to inquire tat padartham, what is that which I have rejected before, and what I am looking for that also, and I had to equate that. How can I be that which is the object and you say this is subject, and that's why the Vedanta becomes a pramana in that. And we'll go into more details as the Vidyaranya expounds, and in the next sloka, we're going to be analyzing a little bit some of the objections raised at this stage. Let's look at the sloka 11. Abhanena param prema, abhanena param prema, bhanena vishaye spruta, bhanena vishaye spruha, ato bhanepya bhatasau, ato bhanepya bhatasau, paramananda tatmanaha, paramananda tatmanaha. Together. Abhanena param prema, bhanena vishaye spruha, ato bhanepya bhatasau, paramananda tatmanaha. So here it is said, you are saying you are the source of happiness, and how can you say that? So abhanena param prema, do you know yourself? If you know yourself, the problem is solved, because I am trying to find out who that self that I am is. So, abhani, if I don't know who I am, param prema, I cannot be supreme, because in the previous sloka, in the sloka 9, it says, yamatma paranandaha. This is sloka 8. Yamatma paranandaha parama premaspadam yataha. This Atma is of the supreme happiness, paranandaha, and parama premaspadam. Therefore, it is a source of supreme love. Now, you say, how can you love? You say, I am supreme love and I am Ananda, all the statements you are making. Let me ask a question. Do you love Gaga Boo? You have heard Gaga Boo now. Do you love Gaga Boo? What is Gaga Boo? I don't know whether it's Gaga Boo. If I don't know whether I love it or not, I don't know it. That means if I don't know it, I cannot say I love it. So for me to love Gaga Boo, I should know what it is. Then I can say whether I love it or not. So therefore, for me to say that I love something, I should have the knowledge of that. Without having the knowledge of that, I cannot say I love it, I like it, or I dislike it. So all those things cannot be mentioned unless I have the knowledge of that. Now the question is, the self is supreme Ananda, is the source of supreme happiness. And since I love anything that is a source of happiness, I love myself. And that is essentially expressed as the Paramanandaha, Paramapremaspadam Yataha. So the fact that I am looking for myself, because the whole Vedanta is because I don't know who I am. And therefore, how can you say that I am the source of happiness? Since you don't know yourself, if you don't know yourself, how can you be a source of happiness and the love for it? You cannot have love for yourself. And therefore, Abhani, if you don't know yourself, Param Prema, there cannot be any supreme love for yourself. Bhanena Vishaye Spruha. In case you know yourself, then Vishaye Spruha. You cannot have the love for other objects. So, I love this, I love this. You cannot depend on other objects for your happiness, because whatever you love is only source of happiness. So, you cannot say, I love my wife, I love this, I love that. All those statements cannot be made, because you know yourself and you are the source of happiness. Once you know yourself and you are the source of happiness, then there is no other source outside, and when there is no source of happiness outside, then there cannot be any love. So therefore, the Vishay, in the objects, you cannot have love at all. Bhane na Vishaye Spruha. So therefore, there is no love for others, and that is, there is no need to study Vedanta also. Why? Because you know yourself already. The whole Vedanta is only because I don't know myself, therefore I take myself what I am not as myself. That is the problem. And if you know yourself, the whole problem is solved. Close the book. There is no point further. No further study is required, because the problem is solved. So how do you solve this problem? So this is the objection that is raised, and here the answer is here provided. Atho bhanepya bhatasau paramananda tatmanaha. So ataha, therefore, bhanepi abhana bhanepi. So even though I don't know it, still I love it because I know enough. So here the whole problem is, so I don't know of myself enough, but I know it enough for me to love myself. At the same time, I don't know enough for me to not to love others also. That means I know half knowledge and I don't have complete knowledge of myself. That is, even though I am source of happiness, I do not know that, and I am thinking that source of happiness is outside, therefore I am going after things outside. Therefore, I do not know that but at the same time, I know about myself, therefore even the objects are for my sake and not for the other's sake. So, I love myself enough because I know myself enough, but I don't know completely, and that's why bhanepi atho bhane api abhata asau. So therefore Paramananda Atmanaha. But Atmanaha is Paramananda nature, is supreme happiness, even though I don't know completely, I know enough. How do you make all these statements here? I know a little bit and I don't know completely. And here he gives an example in the Vidyaranya gives an example here. And let's look at the example he has provided. But there are other examples, that's Adhyasa Bhashya, Shankara gives examples, and Vedanta gives other examples also. You have to put tight. Ajjetra vargamajjasta, ajjetru vargamajjastra, putra jayana sabdavatu, putra jayana sabdavatu, bhanepya bhanam bhanasyam, bhanepya bhanam bhanasya, pratibhimbena yujyate, pratibhimbena yujyate. Together. Ajjetru vargamajjasta, putra jayana sabdavatu, bhanepya bhanam bhanasya, pratibandhena yujyate, pratibandhena yujyate. Here he is giving an example where I know it, at the same time I don't know it. So it is here an example of Ajjayana. So in olden days, they used to chant the Veda Ajjayanam. The children were sent to Gurukula, and where they start first learning the chanting of the whole Vedas. Before they learn anything, first they have to learn how to chant. After that only the meaning of that is explained. So called Ajjayanam, Veda Ajjayanam. And Veda Ajjayanam, the way it is a systematic way of their doing. First the teacher says something, the students repeat, and the teacher again together repeat, and then the third time the students themselves do it. So that's how just now slokas we chanted, one we repeat, and then together you repeat, and that's how the whole Ajjayanam is done. So here Ajjetru vargam ajjasta, putra jayana sabdavatu. So the parent who has sent his the son to Gurukula to learn the Veda Ajjayanam, and he wanted to check if the son is chanting properly or not. And he cannot go and disturb the class, so he is standing outside and wants to listen his son's chanting. But he is not able to recognize, at the same time he is recognizing, because he is chanting along with the chorus of everybody. So Ajjetru vargam ajjaste. So Ajjetru vargam, because along with the other students, he is also chanting together. So his voice is also along with many others. So the father is able to hear, at the same time he is not able to hear clearly, to distinguish exactly how his son is chanting in relation to other people. Because everybody is chanting together, and that's why when everybody is chanting, your mistakes get covered, because other people are able to cover your mistakes. And in the same way, the father wants to know whether he is making any mistakes, but he cannot find out the errors in that, because the chanting is going on. Along with the chanting, other things are there. So there is a pratibandhanam. Pratibandhanam is obstruction to know exactly how his son is chanting. And so at the same time, he knows his chant, because he can recognize a little bit of his voice, but he cannot recognize sufficiently clearly to distinguish whether he's chanting with proper intonations and every word correctly or not. Because the father knows the chanting, so he wants to test it, but he cannot test it. So bhanepi abhano bhanasya. So he knows, at the same time he doesn't know. So it's not a contradiction here. The contradiction is, he knows that student is there, his son is there. At the same time, he cannot distinguish the son's voice clearly compared to other people's, for him to know that if the son is chanting properly or not. So it's called pratibandhanam. Pratibandhanam is an obstruction. Obstruction is all together, the sahajayas together chanting is itself is a pratibandhanam is obstruction, and because of that he is not able to grasp clearly. And therefore, pratibandhanam, the obstruction is a problem, and obstruction is not complete obstruction, it's a partial obstruction. Therefore, bhanepi abhane. He knows, at the same time he doesn't know. So this is exactly the statement here. And the classical example is much more pertinent. What one can see, where I am walking in the semi-dark room, in the semi-dark street or aisle, and I heard a lot of snakes around it because it just rained, and a lot of snakes moving around. And when I was walking through, I stepped on something there. So when I stepped on it, it's a very soft, and then it is 5 feet long, and it is lying in the middle of my walkway, and I, out of fear, you see, there is a snake here, because it's not completely dark or completely lighted, so I can see some aspects of the snake, but I don't see completely. But because I'm afraid of snake, I thought there is a snake there. So it is bhanepi abhane. I am seeing it, at the same time I am not seeing it. What is there? There is a rope only, and because it's pitch dark room, not pitch dark, it is semi-dark, and I see an object there. So vastu jnanam is there, that there is an object. It is 5 feet long. It is lying there. When I stepped on it, it is soft. So it is 5 feet long. It is an object there, and it is soft when I put my leg. And all these are attributes of the object that I am perceiving in that light. And this, from those attributes, the mind says this is, because I am not able to clearly, but based on the attributes, I say it is a snake. Why it is a snake? Because snake also has the same attributes, and rope also has the same attributes. So mind cannot differentiate based on the attributive knowledge whether it is snake or a rope. So here is the problem. Problem is, because of the conducive environment is not completely conducive enough for me to see clearly. Clearly means I cannot gather all attributes of the object completely for me to say it is a rope or it is a snake. I cannot make a statement like that, because all attributive contents of the object are not being perceived by the senses. Only partial attributes are coming in. And based on the partial attributes, I am making a judgment call. And because I know there is a vastu jnanam is there, object knowledge is there. Not that I don't see, I see an object. But I have no clear the identity of the object, because all objective knowledge is attributive knowledge. Is there? One has to be careful here. We got a little bit of epistemology here. Epistemology is science of knowledge. And here we mentioned that the objective sciences differ from the point of Vedanta here. So Vedanta and Mimamsa, I mentioned that the mind along with the senses go out in the form of a vritti and the envelops the object, and in the process senses gather the attributes of the object, and that attributes of the object becomes a vritti in the mind, and the vritti is illumined by, it is a thought, illumined by the light of consciousness that I am. So the subject I and the object this are coming together for me to be conscious of the object. This is what happens in the according to the Vedanta. According to the science, it's not the mind going or the senses going, the information is brought in, the light is falling on the object, and the light gets reflected by the object, goes to the retina and forms an image, and the image is transmitted by the optical nervous system through an electrical signal called neurons, and the neurons are just electrical plus minus signs and it's converted to a subtle or software called thought, and by a program language that the Lord has provided, and therefore vritti is again ultimately is formed. In both cases the vritti is formed, thought is formed. In one case the mind and the senses are going there. In this case the information is brought in. And in the final end is a thought is formed. So existence of the object is transformed as though existence of a thought in the mind. The contents of the object is attributes of the object. The object is right there. Thank God it's not coming into my eye. Object is still out there. What about the attributes? Not even the attributes are coming to me. So what is really coming is only reflected attributes of the object. Just as I showed you, my hand says, my hand is not going into your eyes. So you are only seeing my hand. The light is falling on the hand, the reflected light from the hand, and the reflected light follows the shape of the hand, the form of the hand. A form still stays with the hand. It doesn't go with the light. It stays with the hand, but only reflected light from that hand. You cannot see the backside of the hand because the reflected light from the backside is not reaching you. So reflected light only reaching, that means reflected form only, and the form of reflection depends upon the reflecting medium also. So if it is a black body, if it is a white body, if it is a colorful body, depending upon, even though white light is falling with all the colors, only the red light is going because all other lights are absorbed, only therefore you see the red. And so you think the object is red. It's only the red wavelength is not absorbed because of the nature of the object. If the nature of the object is absorbed to red but not blue, then you see the object blue. If it is a mixture of two light, then you have a mixture of those colors. So all colors are visible only because of the absorption and the reflection. So the form and all that is only a reflection of the attributes of the object, according to science. And in the Vedanta also, it is only the reflected attributes only the senses can gather. Senses cannot gather the real attributes because real attributes belong to the object only. So the blue lotus, blueness belongs to the lotus. So when I am seeing blue lotus, only reflected attributes of the blue lotus only, blueness is only I can see. And if I am color blind and I cannot see blueness, then I won't see blueness. I will see just a lotus or colorless lotus or whatever the lotus, or if all that it is a black lotus, if everything is absorbed. So black body is nothing but it absorbs all the light. So all these things are part of the science and part of the Vedanta also to some degree. So science is much more objective, at least up to this point of neurons. We have to follow the science, but beyond that, science have no tools to analyze the subtle. The thought or the mind cannot be analyzed by the scientific investigations because the tools are subtle, or the object is too subtle for objective investigation. So scientists have no access other than up to neurons. He can tell, and he can tell about the waves and all those things, but up to that only he can stop. He can just imagine this is how this is happening and so on, because he has no one-to-one correspondence between the particular neuron and the particular thought that arises in the mind. But anyway, this is all part of it. But basically what it amounts to is, when I am looking at the object there, because the light is not sufficient, and it may be a rope, it may not be, but there is an object there that I can see, but I am not able to see clearly. So I am seeing the form. I can see 5 feet long. I am not seeing 10 feet when it is a 5 feet, so I am seeing only 5 feet long, and it is in the middle of the alley that I am walking, and when I stepped on it, I felt it is soft. So softness is again attribute that the sense of touch is gathering, and these attributes are not the distinguish enough to differentiate one object from the other. So we have to know how does knowledge occurs. The objective knowledge, when the thoughts form, thought content is nothing but attributes of the object, and attributes of the object are illumined by the consciousness that I am, for me to know that these attributes of the object, and from that I not only cognize but I recognize. Recognition comes from the memory. So memory has to operate. If I do not have any memory, I see the object as though it is a new object. So therefore, from the memory, how do I memorize? Because from the attributive content, I look into my memory and see what is that object that has the similar attributes. From the past, I know a rope also has that attributes, and also a snake has that attributes. Since I am afraid of the snake, because of the safety or security of myself, I immediately project that it is a snake and not a rope. In fact, I don't even get the idea it is a rope, because the dominant factor is the fear, and that makes me to say that. So what is the problem here? Problem is I am not getting complete attributive content of the object, and therefore I am not able to have a clear cognition and recognition of the object. So errors in perception occur when I do not have the complete attributive content of the objects. Or if my senses are not faithful, that means my senses are not up to the mark, that means I have defects in my senses. If I don't have a 20/20 vision, or if I do not have proper hearing capacity, I may hear but I don't hear. So because of the sense capabilities, I may not see the object as it is, and I see only what my senses have brought in, and I conclude that based on my sense input, this is what it is. So what it is what I see it, therefore it is there. I see a snake there, therefore it is a snake there. It may not be a snake, but I am seeing it as a snake, because based on the attributes, I say bhanepi abhane. So what is the pratibandha here? What is an obstruction? Obstruction is not having a clear light or a full light. If there is a full light, there is no problem. I can see rope. If it is completely dark, then there is no problem. I don't see neither a rope nor a snake. I just walk through without having any problem. And therefore, it's only problem and the errors in perception occur when I do not have the complete knowledge. And this is what you call a pratibhasika error. Pratibhasika error is my mental projection. Other fellow may have a vision, can see even in that pitch dark or semi-darkness, he can see a rope there, whereas I am seeing a snake there. So I am projecting a snake there. Where is the snake? There, not in my mind. But how did its snake come? If the snake is really there, I better be careful. So when the light inquiry comes into picture, when I have a doubt about the object, when I say, hey, there's a snake there, don't go there. He says, there's no snake, there is a rope. What do you mean it's a rope? It is a snake. No, it's a rope. If it's a rope, why am I seeing a snake? That's my question. Why are you seeing a snake when it is a rope? So a questionable about my perception has occurred, about the reality of what is there is raised, because another person says it is not a snake, it is a rope. Therefore, an inquiry is required to find out whether it is a rope or a snake. How do I inquire? I need appropriate means to reveal the object completely. What's appropriate? In this case, it is the torchlight is required to shed more light, so that I will get complete attributes of the object, so that I have a clear understanding of what is there without making an error of judgment. And this is what is called error in perception, because the attributive knowledge is not completely clear. And this is a pratibhasika error, because my mind is projecting the error there, whereas your mind is not projecting error there, because you are seeing as it is. And therefore, the error is due to the snake is coming from mind. Why did the snake come? Because non-apprehension of what is there, non-apprehension of or non-apprehension completely, because I am seeing something at the same time, I am not bhanepi abhane. I am seeing that there is an object there, but I am not clearly seeing for me to make a judgment call correctly. So it is there, and there is a pratibandha, obstruction in this case of seeing, perception, is due to a lack of secondary requirement that there has to be sufficient light. And therefore, the error in perception. And this is called the pratibhashika error. Same way is a shell and a silver. Shell and silver is when I am walking on the near the beach, suddenly I saw an object which looks like a silver. And I picked it up and look at it more carefully, and now I realize that it is not really silver, it is a shell. Immediately I throw it. So what happened to the silver? Why did I see silver when it is shell? So when I am seeing first time, this is the way I would explain. When I am seeing first time, the dominant characteristic of that is the silveriness, which is very dominant attributes of that, and that is coming in, and based on only that part of the attribute, it is of that size, and it is the silvery dominant character is coming. Based on that attribute alone, I say it is a silver, and therefore I picked it up. If it is a shell, I won't pick it up. So the fact that further transaction occurred is because I believe it is a silver at that time. Then when I picked it up, then I have the remaining attributes of the object is now clear, and based on the other attributes, even though it is silvery, remaining of the other attributes, I say it is not really silver, it's only a shell. So this pratibandha is not having a complete attributive content of the object to define the object correctly. This has to be understood. So attributes of the silver as though superimposed, because it has a silvery attributes, and the silvery attributes is still there, even though when I said it is only a shell, but still silvery attribute. Now I know that silvery attribute is not due to the silver, and it is due to the shell. And why did I get a silver? Because in the past I have seen silver with that dominant attribute of silveriness. Therefore, I am projecting that attributive content into this, because I have seen silver in various names and forms and so on, in the form of a small size or the big size and all, where the dominant character is the silveriness, and I am seeing here the silveriness, and from that I say it's a piece of silver. So based on the dominant character. So therefore, the attributive content is clear, but I am not getting complete attributes to me, it is shell. This is called pratibhashika error. Other people can see completely shell and may not have the error that the shell silver. Shell silver means just like the snake rope. It is not really a snake, it is a rope but perceived as a snake. But there are Vyavaharika, the errors where similar to a sunrise and sunset, or a crystal which is appearing to be red in the presence of a flower, or even the mirage waters. So in the case of a mirage water, I am seeing there as though there is a water, I am thirsty, and you see I am thirsty and there is a water there. When I go, that water keeps going further and further, because the reflection of the sunlight at a glancing angle gives me an impression of that it is a water there, because I get the same sense of reflection based on which in the past I know water also does this. At a glancing angle I can see the water reflecting the sunlight, therefore I know it's a water. So based on the past memory, based on the reflection of the sunlight at a glancing angle, I say that it is a water. But it is only a sand, and it's only dry sand, there is no water even. But after knowing that it is not a water but it is only dry sand, it's only because of the reflection I am getting it. I still see a reflection appearing as a water, but I know that is not a water, it is essentially the mirage water, it's only sand reflecting like that. Whereas in the case of a rope snake, once I know that it is a rope, the snake is gone. Where did the snake go? If the snake has gone really, that is real snake. Snake that came, from wherever it came, it went. Where did it come from? In my mind only. So in my mind I have a wrong notion that it is a snake, and therefore that right understanding removes that pratibhasika error because it's my mental projection. Whereas the mirage water or the sunrise and sunset, all are not my projection, it is Ishvara's projection. Everybody will see sunrise and sunset also. But Shastra says sun never rises nor sets. It is the earth that is moving around. But even after knowing that the sun doesn't rise and set, I can still go and watch beautiful sunrise and sunset, knowing well sun does not rising and setting. So therefore, these are called vyavaharika errors, and this is called sopadika, the adhyasa. Other one is nirupadika adhyasa. Upadi means there is no real snake there, but it's only apparent snake. Whereas there is a real sunrise and sunset that I am seeing, but actually from the point of absolute truth, there is no sunrise and sunset. Why? Who says that? Shastra says. Shastra science says that it is not the, even though you are seeing the sunrise and sunset and you can operate transactionally and the day in and day out, you can go to office and come back, all those transactions can go on, assuming that the sun is rising and sun is setting and now it's dark and now all that can be going on, knowing very well that sunrise is not really there because Shastra says so. I should have a faith in the Shastram, and faith Shastram is also logical enough for me to establish that indeed it is not the sun rising and sunset, it is the movement of the earth. How did I get the knowledge? By going through science, that's called Shastram. And similarly here, going to the statement here is the Vidyaranya says is pratibandhosti bhatiti vyavahararha vastuni. In the vyavahara, in transactional objective errors that you see, there is a pratibandha asti. There is an obstruction to have, for not able to get a clear the vision of the truth that is there. So bhatiti vyavahararha vastuni tad nirasya viruddhasya sasyopadana muchyate. Because of this, because of that, tat nirasya. So having denied the existence of the original, so the virodhasya, I get opposite or I get completely different picture of what it is than what it is. So what is there is the rope, but because I have not have a clear apprehension of the rope, and because of the pratibandha, because of the obstruction, because there is not enough light, mind doesn't stop there. Because of non-apprehension, mind is projecting that it is a snake. Even though it is mind projection, even though it is a pratibhasika error, but snake is not in the mind, snake is out there. And because of that, I see the snake is real. Until I get a further knowledge, this knowledge of the snake there is essentially prama. The other one is brahma. Brahma means error knowledge is it's not really there, but it appears to be there. That's called Brahma. So, Prama is a validated knowledge, and Brahma is that knowledge which is invalidated by a higher Pramana. How did I invalidate? It's not really a snake but a rope, because I put a torchlight. Now I can see in the light, I can see that it's a rope and not a snake. So, higher knowledge, that means better knowledge, negates the previous errors in perception. or perception of whatever that I have. So Brahma, it becomes a Brahma only I have a Prama. That means I have a real knowledge. Then this knowledge that it was a snake is gone, and therefore I had to see that it's indeed what I thought is a mistake. Why did the mistake come? Because I'm not able to see clearly. So whenever there is a pratibandha, there is an obstruction and my vision is not clear, then and therefore the mind is projecting something different. Virodhasya, completely opposite it can project, and that's what I take it as a real until I have the real knowledge. So here is one problem. We have to be clear. First, number one, there is a pratibandha, there is an obstruction. And that will not stop there. I don't see, so it may be rope or a snake, it doesn't stop there. The mind is projecting something there. So virodham, there is something else I am projecting there, and it is a snake, and the snake is not in the mind, but it is out there in the alley, and I am afraid of the snake. And if I have blood pressure, my blood pressure can go, and blood pressure is not imagination, and you can look at the blood pressure meter, and then it will show up all the fear and all that anxieties and the breathing hard and running away from the place in order to save myself. All consequences are real enough. They are transactionally real. Even though error is pratibhasika, that's only mental projection, the other associated consequence of that error can be more real, transactionally real, because I'm running away, I am breathing hard, and my heart is pumping too hard, and all the fear, the sweat, and all that is that because of the consequence of seeing a snake there. And if the snake has bitten me, and I get all other problems also. So therefore, the virodhasta nirasya virodhasya tasyopadanam uchyate. Tat utpadanam, the birth of the opposite aspect comes into picture because of the obstruction, and it is semi-obstruction. So I have a partial knowledge and I don't have complete knowledge, and the partial knowledge is completely filled now by the mind, and I get the object is projected. So what is called non-apprehension of the truth will lead to misapprehension of the truth. Non-apprehension is not completely non-apprehension, partial non-apprehension. So how does this apply to self-knowledge? We have to understand, and this whole thing, in fact, is Shankara writes Adhyasa Bhashya, says the error of superimposition. How does the error occurs, and why this error, and what is the cause, and how to remove the error. So how did I remove the error due to the snake of perception? By proper inquiry is required to know whether, when I inquire properly using the proper light, then I can see rope as a rope, and what happened to that, all the heart problems and all that, automatically they go away. It may take a little bit more time, but now I am convinced that it is a rope and the fear is gone, and slowly I am back to the normal, and everything, my breathing becomes normal because it's only a rope, and there is no reason for me to be afraid of. All these things, secondary things, will automatically it may take some more time, but it will ultimately come down, because now I can see the truth as a truth. And to seeing the truth as a truth, to recognize that it is not a prama but a brahma, I need a better means of knowledge. Better pramana is required. And this has to be important. So whenever I have a proper lack of knowledge is not clear, then I need a higher pramana to clarify what it is there than what I think it is there. And higher pramana has to resolve why am I seeing that before, and why it was a mistake, and what is the real truth. All that has to be logically understood. So why I was seeing it as a snake when it's only rope, now I understand that I was getting only partial knowledge of the object. Now how does this apply to Atma? That we will go into the more details as we understand it in terms of application of the philosophy to the self-knowledge. That we will go into the next class. We will stop here. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. எவ்வளோ மினிட்ஸ் அம்மா? 50. ஃபைன் இல்லைண்ணே.
நான் சொன்னேன்.
சொல்ல நான் பார்க்கல. நான் போன ஜெயந்தி நான் பார்க்கல என்னாச்சு? ஓ மை காட்.
2 செகண்ட் ஏதோ 15 மினிட்ஸ்